I like it. Kent, it's great to meet you. I should have said up front, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm in the middle of the country.
Oh, perfect.
So, um, but it's great to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting into your life as an author and everything, marketing, advertising. But before we do that, one of the more momentous things that we all lived through was getting through this pandemic, that COVID-19 pandemic, and it shifted so many things, and it's created these reverberations that we're all still feeling. How did it change the way that you do your thing, and how are you still feeling that time period now?
We by then, by the time 2020 came around, my staff was small, which was intentional. I went from 33 employees, and we were down to two. And working our little small office here in Salt Lake was serving another company. We were on a retainer actually for another company, which was about 15 people, serving the direct marketing for many of the big Medicare and long-term care insurance carriers and agents. So we had a small office, and with all the shutdowns and everything that took place, it was a matter of it didn't do anything for me because I came to work every day anyway.
Yeah.
And I had one assistant who had been with me for ages, and she was a young, vibrant thing that, of course, went right out and got COVID. And, and she came into work one day and wasn't very close. It was just the door of my office saying, I'm not feeling that well today, so I think I'm going to start working from home.
Yeah.
And of course, the next week, I woke up one morning and I was just so exhausted
Wow.
uh, my wife said, I think you've got COVID. And I said, yeah, but I don't have any symptoms. She goes, you're never this tired. And so I ran in, got a test. It was positive. And so, of course, I went to work the next day.
Right.
But I was here alone.
Yeah.
Our office is on the second floor of a building, and it's pretty much empty because everybody else was, staying home and obeying the governor to
Yeah.
not go anywhere.
Yeah.
So from then on, I had a few tired days, but continued working with our clients remotely all over the country.
Yeah.
And mostly what COVID did for me is that it bothered me because there were, the big essential businesses. Of course, I was grateful for a couple of our big grocery stores to stay open. I was grateful for Home Depot, where I had some projects going and those
Yep.
kind of things. But the little Ace hardware store and the little plumbing supply store across the street, and those kind of companies were, closed down.
Yeah.
And being a small business myself, my heart broke
Yeah.
for. So that's probably what the illnesses. Yeah, almost everybody I knew eventually got COVID, and I had it twice. And both even though I'm somewhat overweight, according to my doctor, you can never believe a doctor anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her chart on her wall is completely lying.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, the I should have been ill and whatever, but I was blessed enough to not have anything more than I was just tired for a few days.
Yeah.
And so looking at it that way, I watched what was going on in the world and had all the same frustrations. I'm a church going guy, and it's like, okay, we can't go to church. So we did remote
Yeah.
for a few months. And then finally, our governor said, you know what? He said to the predominant church here, of course, said, we're not going to close you down. Be reasonable. So within a few months, we were back, spacing, um, the pews were, three people on a pew scattered around, and but we continued
Yeah.
and worked through it. So it was a challenging time for everybody, but my wife loved it. She's an introvert. She
Yeah.
loved not having to go anywhere or do anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. It did work for the other half of the people out there. That's for sure. So there's a lot going on in your world, and I want to get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. To do that, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day. Johnny in the back of the room is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
I say, I'm one of those guys who gets to write and create advertisements that you see. So when somebody wants to sell you something or sell your parents something, I'm the guy that thinks up the way for them to tell you why you should buy it. whether you're buying some breakfast cereal or that new Nintendo game, or for a lot of my personal clients, insurance policies,
Yeah.
uh, I come up with the way to tell them why they should spend their money on my clients' products.
So, what did you want to be when you were in the third grade, when you were young? What was your dream?
I wanted to be an artist.
Okay.
I've loved art ever since forever.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that meant, but I love to do art and create stuff.
So, what were the foundational seeds? Take me back to where you were born and raised. What were these foundational seeds that got you to this point where you're so good at writing and getting people to and marketing things in the correct way? How did that happen?
I think it was part of just my nature that I love to create things. My mother didn't like it because I was always making a mess, making something.
Yeah.
Um, the quick story is I in our second grade class, our teacher had us draw a picture of a, I think it was a cabin, um, something like that. And I painted it up. It was beautiful. We hung it on the wall, and all day long, I admired that mine was the best in the whole school.
Yeah.
I was the best artist ever. And at the end of the day, the teacher said, go get your artwork and you can take it home. And when I got up there, this tall, red-headed kid, now this is second grade, took my picture off the wall to take it home. And I was just incensed that when I found out that I had admired his picture all day, and that wasn't mine. Mine was still sitting there.
Wow.
And I met this kid um, in second grade, and he and I competed in art clear through high school,
Wow.
and we became incredibly best friends.
Wow.
Um, I got to serve as a missionary down in South America. At the same time, he served as a missionary in Italy. We came back from serving. This is so we're now 21 years old.
Yeah.
He went to Utah State University in their art program. I went to BYU in their art program. When we graduated, we became business partners and started an ad agency.
Wow.
So, and he's still a dear friend. He just retired, and we were business partners for a few years. He went off and became, wealthy and solid in a big corporate, and I stayed entrepreneurial my
Wow.
career. So, just all the way through my entire life, it was creative writing, painting, drawing. I'm not an artist. I'm an ad guy now
Yeah.
because I wasn't that good of an artist, but I was creative enough that coming up with ideas was the easy part. Still is.
Wow, yeah, when I hear stories like that, people wonder like why we're here, what does it mean? Is there a higher power? If there was ever a reason for you to believe in God, these are examples of it. I mean, who would have known in that scenario and that he would become so close and you would have this shared connection your entire life?
Yeah, it's been a blessing, an
Yeah,
absolute blessing. And I'm a believer anyway,
yeah.
but I had some people ask me that they go, well, how are you so successful? I go, well, I was supposed to be rich and famous by the time I was 30. That was the goal.
Yeah.
And then I gave up on the rich part and wanted famous. And then I realized famous didn't pay anything when I got famous for a few years. I tried to do the rich, but it's actually blessings from God, providence.
Yeah.
God has just he directs and guides. The next book I'm writing a book, a couple of just creative fiction, historical fiction that I love. But one of the books that I'm writing that needs to be published this year in 2025 is it's called Blunders and Blessings. And basically it's how did I get here?
Yeah.
Where did I come from? And it starts with that story that I just told about
Yeah.
meeting a guy by the name of Court Nauman was my best buddy.
Yeah.
From that day on who I met and who they introduced me to who they introduced me to, who I met by doing work for them, who they referred me to. And basically it's a story about how I didn't do anything but just follow the path
Yeah. That's
and do
it.
my best in each one of those roads and end up now to where, I'm for my marketing career, I'm on the sunset era of it
Yeah.
and be loving to write, it's launching an author career.
So, who's been that hero for you? Who's been that bedrock for you in your life?
Besides my wife,
Yeah.
um, she I mentioned she's an introvert, but she's so rock solid in I actually met her as a missionary. She was a fellow missionary that we were served in Bolivia. And she was one of those people that was so dedicated and righteous and good. And I'm just a 19-year-old kid, out having an adventure, trying to be a disciple of Christ. But I'm a kid having fun, in a new culture. And yet she was just so good and wonderful. Didn't hurt that she was cute.
Yeah.
Uh, when we returned home, she's been that way with our 5 kids, with our grandkids, just this rock solid person with doing the good thing all the time.
Yeah.
So, from a career standpoint, um, the competition with Court has been a blessing because it's an honest. He's thrilled when I do well. I'm thrilled when he does well.
Yeah.
I loved it when I did not win first place and he did.
Yeah.
I hated it too because
Yeah.
he always outdid it. I tease him that I finally won because the scholarship to BYU was more expensive than the scholarship to Utah State.
Yeah.
So my reward was bigger. But I've had a handful of associates and a few partners during those years, and I've been blessed that they were great men. One of them ended up being the vice president of Sprint, the telecommunications. He ended up selling out, and I worked closely with him right out of college, and he's very wealthy. I've watched what he does with his career.
Yeah.
One of my partners that I stumbled into is a great story. I stumbled into a relationship with him, and he ended up selling a huge telecommunications company, but he wanted an ad guy.
Yeah.
He grabbed me because he wanted a creative guy to break through the mundane advertising stuff.
Yeah.
And he kind of clung on to me and helped set me up to where we're still, in fact, he was a partner for a bunch of years. I bought him out over the years. And about a month ago, he says, "Kent, are you still in business?" And it's like, "Of course I am." And he goes, "Good. Here's another project." So those kind of relationships with wonderful people over the years. I have the one that I'm on a retainer right now that it's it was a competitor 12 years ago, and I was introduced to him, and he said, "I need you." And it was right at the perfect time when I was winding down some of my big clients, and he made me his creative director. I still run my agency, I still write, but I serve as his creative director.
Yeah.
And he said, "Let's give it 90 days and see what happens." And, I'm starting my 13th year.
Wow.
Just great people like that, good, honorable, kind. So those kinds of people I've been blessed to be associated with.
You know
From a,
the
oh, go
no.
ahead.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
From a sheer advertising, um, David Ogilvy,
Yeah.
who I read about and studied about back in college,
Yeah.
I've always looked up to him and kind of his theories. And so many of the old guys like that, I've
Yeah.
read all their books, I've listened to all their tapes.
Yeah.
Just just the foundational, solid marketing, human behavior. I've kind of followed that realm.
So let me ask you this. The one thing about being successful and being rewarded for what you do is that you have to take risk. What is the biggest risk that you've taken in the arc of your career?
Oh, several, by the way. I'm not adverse to risk,
Yeah.
and I shouldn't. I shouldn't be risking a wife trying to raise 5 kids, but business risks. I would partner with somebody because it was a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for a great idea,
Yeah.
and out of let's say 20 great ideas that I chased, 3 or 4 of them really have paid out.
Yeah.
The rest of them, if I put all the loss that I have together, I could have bought 4 or 5 more houses.
Yeah.
You know, this guy, I have one that was such a brilliant, it's still a brilliant idea. It was for self-insurance. I did a ton of study. I put my heart into it. And when all was said and done, it's still great if the people that I hadn't believed in didn't take all the money and run.
Yeah.
But I believed in it enough that I invested a ton of money in their stock, which is now worth zero.
Yeah.
I I look at that big red number that sits there like that's never going to change unless in the resurrection maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, but probably the biggest risk was taking out a second mortgage on my house to invest some money in a potential company that was going to have me be their creative director.
Yeah.
We were scrambling to come up with enough money,
Yeah.
and the partners that wanted me in for my creative side said, all it's going to take is $5,000. We'll each put in $5,000 to start this company. I didn't have $5,000. I talked my wife into a second mortgage, and we took the $5,000. I figured, well, I'm going to get paid the 5,000, so it's not that big a risk.
Yeah.
And over the next 10 years, that investment spun out for me probably $50,000, $60,000 in cash on the side of
Wow.
my regular business.
Wow.
And it's one that has spun into several others. So it was a big risk at the time.
Yeah.
5,000 doesn't sound like much, but in 2001, when
Yeah.
you're broke and you're wondering how to, and you need a second mortgage just so you can make a few mortgage payments.
Uh-huh.
Um, but again, it was with really good men.
Yeah.
Three other partners were good, honorable, great men. So I was blessed because of that.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Um, Probably show up and don't quit.
There you go.
I'll back up. One other that was great. Early on in 1985, I created a direct mail package for a company, and it pulled a 28% response rate, which was just phenomenal. It was a business to business campaign. And the company that helped me create it and produce it, it was a film strip of the message that was tucked in a really gorgeous package. And the company that built it for me was in St. Louis. And when I told the guy how well it worked, he told me that I should enter the Echo Awards. Well, I'd never heard of the Echo Awards. They're the Clio or the Academy Award or the big award in the direct marketing industry.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of it. Uh, I didn't know what it was, but it cost $35 to enter. So I entered this competition. I got a phone call a number of months later from this lady in Montreal, and she said, "Why don't you? Are you going to come to the conference, the big convention in Montreal?" And I, no, I mean, I'm still this young kid that's hardly doing well enough to feed a family.
Yeah.
She goes, "You need to come back because you have won an award." Well, it's another story, but we got together. My wife encouraged me, and I'm in this huge cultural hall, 5,000 people. All the biggest ad agencies in the world are at this conference.
Yeah.
And it was, oh, his name will come to famous actor. He was the MC. He called my name. I had won the best business to business direct mail campaign of the year. It was an
Wow.
international campaign. And talk about a thrill to go up on the stage. And the second place is a guy from Ogilvy and Mather.
Wow.
Third place for some American Express campaign. So I was the guy.
Yeah.
And after that, I thought I'm on top of the world. I'm a nobody from Utah, and
Yeah.
I'm on top of the world. And that evening at the dinner, that night at the dinner, with Bob Stone, who was he was the David Ogilvy of direct marketing.
Yeah.
He was the guy. And I'm sitting there talking with him, and he said, Kent, I asked him, how do I get back to New York? Because that's where everything's happening to become this ad guy. And he goes, don't come. He said, we don't want you, and you don't want to raise your family here. He says, if you stay in Utah and you keep doing this kind of work, the business will come to you.
Yeah.
So I did. I raised my family here, which most of them still love their dad.
Yeah.
Um, and the business has come. I've worked for blue chip companies over the years, anywhere from Disney to Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter to HBO to Wells Fargo. Um, I've been able to work for blue chip, really great companies, and right here in Utah.
Wow. So, as a writer specializing in nonfiction, what's your favorite nonfiction book? What's one of your favorite books?
Um, I really like one of the first that I ever read was Og Mandino's um, The Christ Commission.
Yeah.
And that was just a great story. And of course, it's fiction.
Yeah.
And so the nonfiction, I read. In fact, I probably ought to just pull up my Audible. I can't show you all the ones that I've listened to.
Yeah.
The right now, the what I'm listening to the most are the biographies of writers because I'm writing so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Um, but the historical fiction, I was actually writing the way I started into books. Many years I wrote a couple of small things, but I was writing a book about motivation.
Yeah.
It was going to be a brilliant business book about motivation, and it was so dull. The principles were brilliant, but it was dull.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I got to add some creativity here, something fun. So I put in these people were stranded on an island, and there's some pirates, and a friend of mine read what I had written. She goes, "You know what? I like the pirate stuff. Dump the business stuff and write a historical fiction."
Yeah.
And so I did. I spent the next year, rewrote it, published it in 2022. It's a very good book. It got way too long. So it's hard to it's a joy to read,
Yeah.
but it's hard for people to pick up because it's like, wait a second, that's thick.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with the research. I fell in love with learning stuff, and I get to subtly teach,
Yeah.
different kinds of things. So the new book, the one that just published last month, and then book two of that series, which will publish in the spring, I've fallen in love with telling the business and religious feelings through this historical fiction.
That's wonderful.
And so it's gone from advertising, marketing, that kinds of stuff to creatively telling stuff that I'm excited about.
Yeah. So, of all of these things that you've done and accomplished, specifically in your professional career, because obviously your family's the most important, what is it that you're the proudest of?
I would have to say I'm proudest of staying with one career
Yeah.
for 45 years so that I could feed my family first.
Yeah.
So that if I could have the stability in the home, and I went broke several times where I had to just, how do I do this, honey? And she just said, you will. God will take care of us. We'll get through it.
Yeah.
There was a day that I, I had basically lost everything. I went to the office. I was in this big office building it was my own building. I didn't own it, but we had
Yeah.
it all to ourselves. And I was going to quit. I was going to lock the doors and go find a new job or something.
Yeah.
This was in 2001. I walked through this 14,000 square foot building that had all the stuff and 33 employees. And I thought, how do I do this? Payroll was huge. And I got, you know what? I walked to the front door, opened it up, and kept going.
Yeah.
A new client came in, and then a new client came in. So I think not quitting, and I've loved the work.
Yeah.
So it didn't like I have to go through drudgery,
Sure.
but that alone provided the stability for five children, a wife that could stay home and love them and raise them and challenge them. It gave us opportunities to travel. Our kids were far from rich.
Yeah.
We're in a very middle class home in a middle class neighborhood. And I don't know if everybody knows what that means these days, but that means there's rich people on this side of us and less rich people on that side of us, and we're just happy in the middle. But I've got five children that are college graduates that all have their own homes, that all work and are raising families. I have 22 grandkids.
Wow.
And so it's like, I think I'm most proud of me not ruining it.
Yeah. Right.
Just being the guy who goes to work. My kids, my youngest son is a creative director for a really successful company.
Very cool.
And I say, I would love to just tell him everything he ought to do.
Yeah.
But you know what? Every once in a while he goes, Dad, I did a you thing today. He showed me this package he designed. I go, yeah, I would have designed that.
Yeah.
Really complex and cool.
Yeah.
But I watch my kids do cool stuff,
Yeah.
and I tease that all the awards that I've won. I won that first award in 1985. I won 27 of those
Wow.
over the years. And it's a big deal.
Yeah.
But where are all those awards? They're in a box in my garage collecting dust.
Yeah.
I look at my wife's awards, and I don't have enough walls to put the pictures of her children.
Right.
I say her children because I credit her for their goodness.
Yeah.
They got stuff from dad. They got the creativity from dad, but
Yeah.
they got the goodness from mom.
That's wonderful. So at the end of the day, everyone has a version of you, family, friends, fans, readers, everyone that you work with, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am. I think I'm the creative. I'm the tool for all of them to think outside of tradition
Yeah.
and um, and look at things in a different way because it's always not just better ways because sometimes it's not better,
Yeah.
but it's fresh,
Yeah.
and so it doesn't get stale.
Yeah. I love it. So if anyone wants to pick up your latest book, your previous books, reach into your fascinating world, reach out to you, where's the good business to go to?
The place to go right now is going to be kentmerrellauthor.com.
Okay.
That's my author page, and it's Kent Merrell author.com is where the books are available. The first book is called The Blade of Safavid. It's basically the story of the greatest pirate heist in history, which was Henry Avery in 1695. He captured the Mughal emperor's treasure ship.
Yeah.
It's that story and the manhunt that followed it. The historical parts are all accurate. It's all true.
Yeah.
The characters that are historical, it's all true. But my fiction that surrounds it is the fun part.
Yeah.
And that was my first book that I ever wrote. 500 and something pages. A good read. It's a great audible. It just
Yeah.
won the silver medallion for the best audible book for 2024.
Right on.
Alan Turton, who narrated it, did a great job. It's a great
Yeah.
book. The new one, which is called The Conquest of Liberty, that one published in November. And right now I'm working with Patrick Zeller, who's an actor in New York.
Okay.
He's
Yeah.
narrating it,
Oh, cool.
and he's good. He just
Yeah.
sent me the proofs of it that I've listened to like 5 times. I go, okay, come on, I want more. I want more. That story is basically the history. It's going to be the fiction surrounding the actual history of how, from the 1500s, how God brought the world into where man governs himself in a country called United States.
Okay.
And most of it will concentrate on the Native Americans in Central and South America because it's going to have the whole conquest of the Inca Empire,
Yeah.
the Spanish Inquisition, the Reformation that takes place in Europe, and then what it took for Simon Bolivar to liberate South America
Yeah.
and what it took the North American founding fathers to liberate North America to where liberty reigns. So it's it's that story. It'll be
Yeah.
4 books. It'll take another couple years.
Okay.
But kentmerrellauthor.com is where you can find me and the stuff. And one of the things that I do is I give little 2 to 3 minute videos on there about the historical characters.
Yeah.
People say, was that a real person? Which one of these is fiction? Which one of these is fact?
Yeah.
And so every week I put out a little video, a little 3 minute, 2 minute video about the characters, the historical characters. So you learn a lot about history.
I love it. What a great story, Ken. Thank you so much. I'll put all this in the show notes. It's so great to meet you. I love your story. Best of luck. Have a great holiday season.
Wonderful. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. Best of luck.